Viewer discretion is advised.
Animal cruelty and mistreatment in meat production is a contentious issue that can be often underestimated. In this short film, I'll be highlighting a personal side and story to this issue that is very close to home. I'm not trying to uncover the exact truth, but to display an aspect of the Australian meat industry that is usually overlooked by us as individuals and also the mass media. The documentary A Bloody Business that was aired on Four Corners sparked a lot of attention regarding harsh acts of animal cruelty in various abattoirs in Indonesia. After this footage was released on mass media, the International Livestock Exports voluntarily installed CCTV cameras in several Indonesian abattoirs as a response to the alleged animal welfare breaches raised in early 2012. My uncle, Peter Davies, owns a beef breeding property. From an early age, I would go down to the farm with my family and be around all sorts of animals like the cattle, horses, chickens and sheep. Admittedly, until I was older, I thought my uncle had cows on his farm, just as pets, not to breed. But recently I went down to the farm to interview Uncle Pete, and here is his side of the story.
So this property here, Talagang, is a beef breeding property. It's only part of my income. Most of my income comes from the farm. But this is the sort of thing I've always wanted to do. I've only recently changed to breed Angus. I used to have old Hereford here. I think in terms of ethics and treating the animals well is extremely important, and I think that's not only my thought but also what most beef property owners would condone. Just outside of your moral requirement to be ethical, even from a production point of view, you don't want animals to be stressed. Highly stressed animals and animals that are mistreated will release a lot of lactic acid in the process of being stressed, and that will both darken the meat and also toughen the meat. So a good producer is not interested in husbandry processes that cause any stress to the animal. So for me, I think it's extremely important that they have a good, calm life. Here, the cows will probably live till 13 or 14 years old. The progeny will go to feedlots or to fatteners. So most of the steers will be sold off feedlots or fatteners, and the heifers will stay on farm to build up the herd industry. Within Australia, I know the abattoirs maintain very good high standards, or as best possible standards in terms of processing of animals. I think once you start talking about halal methods offshore, we're no longer in control of it, and I really don't know what does happen to the animals. I think there's a lot of hearsay and maybe some indicative information and filming of what goes on. But I think the answer to the question really for me, if my animals were to go offshore, I would be happier if the processing was done here in Australia rather than overseas, because I know that the abattoirs are controlled, inspected, and the practices are as good as they possibly can be. I think the perception of the meat processing or the beef processing industry portrayed in the media is a lot worse than it really is, and I think this is a problem we've got with our media in general, is that unless it's sensationalist or unless it's bad news, it really doesn't get much of a show. And I think the problem is we're only getting the bad news. We're not really seeing the good news stories. And as I said in my answer earlier, it is not within the interest of a breeder or a fattener or a producer to overly stress animals, because it ends up producing a poor quality product. So it's really strange to me that this negative perception is always in the media, and I really think the industry gets a bad rap. And I think that if media could get into to see the positive practices, there'd be more positive stories come out, but I think the problem is it's just not sensationalist enough to see practices that are quite good and people who are doing the right thing by the animals from birth right through to the packages in the supermarket. In fact, I don't think some of the footage you see is actually in the abattoirs. I think it's when the animals are unloaded from live shipping and also when they go off to the markets. I think that's upsetting to see for anyone, and even that cow in the background is not happy when she hears about it. But again, I think we're only seeing the negative side. It's probably no different to seeing a pet dog abused. To see those stories is quite upsetting, but there's a lot more dogs and cats out there that are well treated. So I think for any farmer to see that is not good, especially those people who put the work into producing an animal with high quality beef on them, and to see mistreatment of that animal, all that work is out the window because one stressful event, releasing lactic acid into the animal's muscles, basically destroys the product they've spent all their time trying to improve and produce. And remember that people are producing high quality beef over generations of animals and in some cases over generations of farms. So they want to produce a good quality product, and they'd hate to see it spoiled right at the end of the process.
Like my uncle said, when reporting, the media has a tendency to focus on the negative aspects of a story, as sometimes this is the more interesting point of view that will engage the audience and create discussion. Although, in instances like the meat industry and animal abuse in abattoirs, we need to understand that a majority of Australian farmers want nothing but the best for their cattle to be treated properly. As Uncle Pete said, once the animal is stressed, it ruins the product completely. From my personal experience growing up, I've been lucky enough to see how well the cattle are treated by many Australian farmers. There are always going to be two sides to every media story. However, in this case, it amazed me how easily my views were changed based purely on what I saw in the Bloody Business documentary. After seeing the documentary, admittedly, I was very skeptical about the meat industry. However, after speaking to my uncle, I was reminded that the meat industry isn't all bad, and it was good to see and hear what the mass media doesn't usually tell you.